Welcome back, Steeler fans, to another episode here at the SteelerFury.com podcast. I am your host, Jeremy Kohlman. You know me as Smith Has Spoken on the message boards, joined by Korey Karbowsky. You know him as Korey39. Korey, how are we doing this evening?
Oh, great. Got one of our rare Steelers wins yesterday. It's always a good week when that happens.
Yes, those have been quite elusive this year. And at least this time we got it in my city, Indianapolis. I was there, yes, and that's why my voice sounds hoarse tonight, people. I was doing a decent amount of yelling, more in the second half than the first half. We'll get into that here in a second. Also recovering from a little bit of a cold, so bear with me tonight. Hopefully it doesn't sound too much like nails on a chalkboard tonight. So let's get to this recap here. A lot of fun to be there in person. Definitely a lot of back and forth. Tale of two halves. First half, it sure looked like Pittsburgh was coming out with a knockout punch. And then, of course, we had to let some fifth rounder, Dallas Flowers, who I was a SteelerFury.com favorite on the message boards, take it back. I think it was 80 some yards. Cause boy, when he first came out of the end zone, I thought, oh, okay, the big time mistake. Boy, was I ever wrong there. Ends up taking it 80 yards, I think, to our 18. Colts end up scoring. But yeah, really tail two halves. That energized the Colts, put them right back in the game. I think the Colts scored 14 unanswered to make that a 17-16 game at one point. And then luckily, we got that late score to go up or whatever. It's always interesting being there in person because I'll be honest, I was in section 605, so I was not exactly close to the field, but you don't turn down a free ticket. So it was definitely interesting to watch things more from a bird's eye view than I have in the past. Definitely hard to tell, a little more down and distance stuff. Had to guess there, a lot of checking at the video board. But there were a lot of positive things about this game. I'll start off right now. I am shocked that the Pittsburgh Steelers have been able to run the ball effectively for 3 straight games, let alone the cast of people we've been doing it with. I mean, I have been one to rag on Benny Snell in the past, and especially some Anthony McFarland. But both of those guys have played themselves very nice, Corley.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Benny Snell football, baby. It's that guy's been sitting around all year. And one thing you can't ever take away from him, he runs hard when he gets the football. And then Anthony McFarland, just some juice when he's got the ball in his hands. He just looks elusive. Not mistaking these guys for starters by any means, but it's hard to ask for those two guys to do much better than what they did. They made some guys miss. They churned out for some extra yards. So that was nice to see.
Yeah, I can tell you this. The last time, we've needed our third and fourth running backs on the season to contribute. The last guys who I can genuinely remember making an impact, those guys' names were Mewelde Moore and Isaac Redman. So it's been a little bit of a while since Pittsburgh's had some step up late when we've needed them to. Kudos to the offensive line for the most part, except Dan Moore. Good God, man. It seemed like every play I was like, oh, there's a Dan Moore hold. Oh, someone got past Dan Moore and made Pickett get rid of the ball quick enough. But the rest of the offensive line, at least in the run game, this unit is getting pushed and they're making things happen, Korey. I know you mentioned there's some things schematically you like. What schematically are you liking from our run game right now?
So I've been seeing a lot more, and I'm sure there's numbers to back me up on this, but just the eye test. I've been seeing a lot more whams and traps where we're getting our guards who can move well. James Daniels and Kevin Dotson. Kevin Dotson has his flaws, but he's a great puller. So that's one thing that I've seen more so this week and the last 2 weeks than I was much before. And that's most probably because you can run more plays when you get a run game going. When you're not just punting the ball away on 3rd and 10, you have to open up more of the playbook. If maybe these plays were installed just recently because you never know with Matt Canada, but we're seeing a little bit more diversity in our play calls, it looks like, and I feel like we're putting our guys into better positions on the O-line because Dan Moore and Kevin Dotson, they're good coming downhill and pin and pull, but when you're asking them to reach guys in the wide zone, that's where they struggled. So I'm just glad that we're putting those guys in a little bit better a position.
You mentioned a little more variety in play calling. I'm going to flip that on its head really quickly because even though I was up in section 605, I don't know how many times we're going to run a damn tight end screen to frickin' Tanner Gentry of all people. I mean, good God, can we get this damn play out of the book already? It worked like once earlier in the year. It hasn't worked since. Cut the shit right now. And then I think there was at least 2 running plays that got run right on top of each other. It looked like the exact same play. Sure enough, the first one worked. The second one, 3-yard loss. I mean, good God, Korey.
Oh, I was ranting to my dad about this, and I sent it to you guys in the group chat. It makes 0 sense that we drafted Connor Hayward, and instead of throwing the tight end screens and the fullback and tight end shuffles or shuttle passes to him, we're throwing them to Zach Gentry and Derek Watt. It blows my mind that we drafted Connor Hayward and the 2 plays that he'd be best at. I mean, he can run routes, he can block. His bread and butter is like getting yards after the catch. And it just astonishes me that we refuse to use him in those situations. I feel like he only gets in occasionally and he runs like a stick route. And I'm one of the biggest Matt Canada haters around. So I still think we're still running about 7 or 8 plays. It's just I'm seeing a few plays that it feels like we haven't ran before, but again, I saw once or twice, and then it's just a lot of split zone and stick routes, but a little better this week than it has been in the past, I feel.
Yeah, I mean, it was nice for Kenny Pickett to get a win on Monday Night Football. I think that's his first primetime action. Could be wrong there. I thought I read that earlier. So nice to see him pick up a win on Monday Night Football. Definitely saw some better things from him this week. Felt like he navigated the pocket a little better, got rid of the ball a little bit more. Definitely a few throws he missed on. I think there were 2 that he kind of skipped to receivers that didn't look like he was able to step into that he probably could have just put some balls at some people's feet. And then I think the most noticeable one, should have been the touchdown score to George Pickens in the corner that should have put the Steelers up 20-3 rather than 16-3 going into half. So still some good things there from Kenny. Do you see anything other than what I just mentioned as far as good things from Kenny this week?
Oh, I mean, you touched on it. The pocket manipulation. I went on this whole tangent a few weeks ago about how that was driving me insane with them, and it's still not perfect by any means. But he's a rookie, and what you hope to see in these rookie years are growth. So, I mean, there was some comment on the discussion boards about it, about how if we could see Kenny Pickett winning a game against Josh Allen and Justin Herbert, if he's got the ball late. I mean, it's going to take time to grow. So even if he doesn't have a rocket arm that those guys have, if he can just keep playing gritty, keep working his craft to where he does all the little things right, kind of like, I'm not a comparison, but doing the little things right in a way that Tom Brady does, where there's not forced mistakes and things of that nature, then that's when, with a good supporting cast around him, you could win some big time games with him. But still, his rookie year, hope to see him continue growing and not take a step back this week against a not so good Atlanta Falcons defense. But we'll touch on that later.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think Mike Tomlin said it best, because apparently, I didn't realize this because I have stopped listening to Mike Tomlin pressers because normally I can't get anything out of him. But apparently there's, a reporter that asks every week, how did you assess what Kenny Pickett did out there? I really liked his answer. He said it's an ongoing process. Now stop asking me this damn question, essentially. Just saying it's like we find out more about Kenny every game. That's all you can ask for out of this year. And, we keep seeing positive things he can work on, things he can get better at. But it's like, as long as we keep seeing good things week to week, next year is going to be the true litmus test where they try to put the best team around him they possibly can, where they probably try to fix this offensive line a little bit. Good God, if left tackle is not our number one need, I don't know what is at this point. Just because Dan Moore's been so bad this year, I don't really understand how you can go from what looks like a promising rookie to a guy that just looks like he hit his ceiling already, which is bad business for a guy that's only in year 2, I believe.
Yes.
So definitely looks like he should be relegated to a bench role next year, but that's a long way off. We still got 5 more games with him this year. So, but believe it or not, dude, there are some positives. From last night. Mike Tomlin, I think, has the best record on Monday Night Football in the history of the league now. I think he's 19-3, which is really impressive when you think about it. Another thing I did not realize this at the time, and it's probably why I get more shit here in Indianapolis for being a Steelers fan than I realized. Last night, I think, makes it 8 straight against the Indianapolis Colts, and that is the second that makes it the second longest winning streak against any team that is not in someone's division. So that's probably why I got a few more, F the Steelers last night than I was probably used to.
Yeah.
But just some fun stuff there. But I mean, I think what stood out, much of the first half is, and really throughout the game, our defense, for the most part, was able to completely eliminate the Colts ground game. In the third quarter, the Colts got it going, put up some scores, but really in the fourth quarter, we kind of shut that down. The Colts didn't get to move the ball as well. Kenny Pickett, led that game-winning drive. I know Mason Cole said, that he went in and called that, winning touchdown run or whatever, which is, another positive thing to see that, he's confident in making calls now, which is good, because let's face it, when you have Matt Canada as a coordinator, before you know it, you're gonna have to start calling your own plays anyway. Just ask But just some good things out of the play last night. We shut down their passing attack last night, really outside the third quarter. The third quarter was a little bit of an aberration. That's where Colts got all their momentum off that kick return. But I thought Levi Wallace had a pretty decent game, but just in general, was able to keep the Colts offense down. Really only had a few splash plays all game long, which has been the big problem for our defense. So kudos to that. No big TJ Watt moment last night, if you ask me, but Alex Highsmith came in when we need him to late, which was a matchup I highlighted last week. Bernhard Raymond, while he wasn't the penalty king this week by any means, definitely gave up a lot of pressure. Alex Highsmith came in with that timely sack, which really drained the Colts of any real chance to make, a play to at least tie to send that game to overtime late in the game there. So with that being said, we'll get off the Colts here. We do have another matchup this week. We travel to Atlanta, the very embattled Atlanta Falcons, which is funny because before we get into these matchups here, whatever, I was going through Atlanta's roster. There are a lot of guys that I know, Will and myself and Korey. I think you probably liked a few of these guys in the draft anyway. That there are a lot of, I think Will calls it, those SteelerFury.com basilisk guys that we all kind of liked. There's Richie Grant in the secondary. I think a lot of us had some good feelings about him. I was a big Rashaan Evans fan when he came out. I know he hasn't exactly lived up to his billing or whatever, but Michael Walker is there. Troy Anderson, big guy we all liked because of his athleticism coming out of Montana State. D'Angelo Malone's a guy I liked out of Western Kentucky. He doesn't play all the time. He's a spot guy. Arnold Ebiketie, Timmy Horn.
We gotta mention what's his face for Will. It's his favorite guy. He doesn't stop talking about him. Timmy Horn's one of them. I've got to pull up the roster.
Timmy Horn was the big.
Timmy Horn's the ginormous one. D'Angelo Malone. He'd be mad if we didn't mention him for him. And then there's one more, and oh my god, it's gonna kill me because it popped into my head, and then how it just shoots away. You keep going. I'm gonna look at this.
Gotcha. But I mean, I like Tyler Algier. a little bit coming out of BYU. I was actually a big Drew Dahlman fan coming out of Stanford. I thought, he kind of fit the line of those guys that had gone on to do some nice things, but and couldn't believe that Matthews is still there at left tackle for them. It just seems like he's been there forever now. Forgetting his first name already. That's sad. But Jake Matthews. As Barry say, it's one of those damn Matthews brothers. They've all played, right?
Yeah.
It's like the longest running tradition. There's always got to be a Matthews in the NFL or something. But what's a matchup that you like for the Steelers this week heading in?
Now that you said it, just popped into my mind. Cordarrelle Patterson. He's talked about him a few times.
Sure.
Yeah. But
the obvious one.
Yeah, jumps into my head. I mean, because my big matchup is Cordarrelle Patterson versus our kickoff team. I'll say this as a specialist, there's no coincidence that the opposing teams' kickoff return teams have suddenly started to have much more success against us when Chris Boswell's been out. I mean, Boswell's an elite kicker for a reason, and I'm sure somewhere there's going to be scouting reports on Matthew Wright. I'm not sure. I haven't looked at them, but I know personally he's a great kicker. But the issue why it took him some time to crack into the league was because of his kickoff ability. And so even if you are still getting at the same distance where you're getting maybe like 8 yards deep in the end zone, what'll happen is if you don't hang the ball up as much, like if you don't get as much hang time on the ball, you're allowing the return team, even if it's 8 yards into the end zone, to get out to the 4 when, with your standard kicker with Boswell, our guys might be on their 35 by the time he's at the goal line. So that's a huge difference. And Cordarrelle Patterson's the most decorated kickoff return specialist of all time. He just passed up Devin Hester, I think, 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, for a record 9th kickoff return for a touchdown, and the NFL record now, like you say.
So and I mean, it's got to be on Matthew Wright to hit touchbacks, but the kickoff team has to have discipline and hold their lanes for a little bit longer. So that's going to be a huge matchup. We can't afford to just give up kickoff returns and expect to win games. That's not the standard. I mean, that's not like a little Steelers quote, but like no one in the NFL typically wins if you give the kickoff return. It's something like you win 70% of the games you get a special teams touchdown in. So if we keep giving up big special teams plays, then we're going to be in trouble. So that's going to be something that we touch up on.
Leave it up to Korey to bring up special teams.
I was supposed to say it earlier. I forgot. Shout out to Presley Harvin. He was pretty rough earlier in the year. I mean, he had a horrible rookie year just for NFL standards. He was bottom 3. And typically if you're a bottom 6 or 7 punter, you're getting cut. Same thing goes with kickers. But I mean, I think Tomlin even mentioned in this press conference, which, I don't listen to, but I saw the clip of it. He has been having a much better year statistically and just eye test. We haven't seen as many shanks, a lot more fair catches. So that's another thing that I wanted to mention. As you say, I bring up the special teams. I had to do it twice.
Okay, twice. Well, we're cutting you off there, though. I mean, one thing that I think, you got to look at this game is I think this is another very favorable matchup for the Steelers offensive line. Even Dan Moore, to a degree. The front 7 for Atlanta has some talent, but they are not deep and they're not good yet. They still have Grady Jarrett, who's been an Iron Man at his position, very quick off the ball and makes things tough. But I mean, Abdullah Anderson and Taquan Graham, I legitimately had to look up because I legitimately felt, and this, as a Steeler fan and just a greater fan of football, I thought I knew most of the players in the NFL. These are two I had to go and look up. I barely even noticed their backups. I already mentioned Timmy Horn as being one of the key backups defensively or whatever. But I mean, it's just a unit that doesn't, scream, oh, really got to protect it, and then even the outside linebackers, Lorenzo Carter, D'Angelo Malone, we mentioned Malone, but he's light as a feather,
Yeah.
it's like you can run at him. The other outside linebacker, Adokende Ogundeje, I think I pronounced that right. Probably not. It's like he's starting, but then Arnold Ebiketie comes in from, talented rookie from Penn State that they took I think at the end of the first round or round 2.
I think early round 2 is what it was.
Yeah, that we liked or whatever, but just Michael Walker, Rashawn Evans, these guys have not been able to stop a lot of people this year. This is a team that can be run on. This is a team we will run on. It'll be interesting to see what Najee Harris's status is later in the week, and the ab issue is why he didn't finish out the game last evening. So it'll be interesting. It'll also be interesting to see maybe Jaylen Warren could be ready to return soon. That would be a big boost if we didn't have to rely on Benny Smell and Anthony McFarland more than we have to anyway. So I definitely think just the Steelers offensive line in general can win some matchups there because we've been playing better run. I mentioned earlier, we've ran the ball for 3 weeks relatively well. Our backs have made plays, our offensive lines made plays. So I think that's a matchup to watch for. Korey, what do you think is another matchup?
I think a big one will be their putrid passing attack versus our overall pass defense. We're on paper. I mean, this is really a week that we should kind of hammer them down with our D line versus their O line. Wasn't a good group last year. It almost arguably got worse this year, but it's one of those groups where no one really stands out, and you kind of have a favorable matchup across the entire line. So, I mean, at left tackle, Alex Highsmith, with how he's been playing, I think that's a big advantage against Jake Matthews. He's not bad, but I mean, Highsmith is a 10-sack guy, and he's going to have to be left on an island with him. I mean, Chuma Edoga, I don't know who that is. And that's going to be Big Cam Hayward's matchup. And then you've still got Larry Ogunjobi versus Drew Dahlman and Chris Lindstorm. Those guys have been nothing to write home about. And then TJ Watt versus Caleb McGarry's kind of nightmare fuel for them. But even worse off, if you go to their receivers and their tight ends, Drake London promising, Cordero Patterson in the backfield. Mm-hmm. I mean, he does work out of the pass game, but Olamide Zaccheaus at one receiver, Damiere Byrd, and I'm looking at Damiere Byrd. Something's telling me that they cut him and this is not active or some. I'm not sure what it was, but I saw something on Twitter. But even if it's Damiere Byrd, then their tight end is Parker Hesse. So this is a group that, even with how bad we've been at D-back throughout the year at points, that doesn't really scare me at all. Even Drake London. And then to top it all off, Marcus Mariota is throwing them the ball. Like, they'll take shots, but it's just not particularly scary shots, in my opinion. So I think that's a resounding advantage we have across the board, from outside matchups to the interior matchups on D-line. So that's going to be something to watch.
Did you say resounding advantage? I don't think I've heard those words at any point this year. No. But yeah, I mean, on paper, it honestly looks like Pittsburgh should run away with this game at some point. But Atlanta has been a pesky team this year. They have stuck around with teams where, we have felt like, Atlanta shouldn't be able to stick with them. And they have, and they found a way to win games. I think the one thing this week that could give the Steelers a little bit of trouble is Mariota's feet. He's still a very gifted scrambler. It's what made him really successful at Oregon in his early years. He can make plays out in space. So our guys are going to have to make sure they wrap up and tackle and don't take unnecessary risks when it comes to tackling him or Patterson in general. Both those guys are, very, plus athletes for their positions. So that is something we need to watch out for. I do feel like we can spy Mariota a little bit with whether it's Terrell Edmonds coming up and playing a little closer to the line of scrimmage. But I think really the majority of our inside linebackers, Mack and Bush, I think both of them can keep up with him. So yeah, it just looks like this should be a week where, Pittsburgh says we're the better team, but we do have to show up. We do have to go to Atlanta. And, I'm never going to say that about it, this team this year. So it'll definitely be interesting. That their corners aren't great. I was never an AJ Terrell fan. I know he had a good year statistically last year, but there's just things about his game that I've never liked. He gets way too much for a number one corner. So if we could ever find out how to throw the ball vertically to Deontay Johnson, I feel like, or just in general, I feel like this could be a game where we take advantage of that. I know we mentioned Richie Grant as a guy we liked, but I mean, and the other guy starting at safety for them, Jalen Hawkins, just another guy who I had to look up. It's just like, I don't know who this is. Couldn't tell you. I think he went to Cal. I think that's the only thing I remember about Jalen Hawkins. When I looked him up, I was like, oh yeah, this was a big kid that played at Cal. That's all I could tell you. So this should be a week where we take advantage of some things, but remains to be seen. Every team's got to show up and play. This is the NFL any given Sunday. So hopefully this next Sunday we don't look like idiots, and maybe we don't call the same running play twice in a row or throw entry of fucking tight end screen. Oh, sorry, I dropped the F-bomb there, guys. But let's get off this game. There are a few other good games coming out this week. Start off right off the bat. I think kind of an interesting game, especially if given what Trevor Lawrence was able to do against Baltimore last week. Yay, Ravens lost a game I did not think they were going to lose. Jacksonville heads to Detroit. Jacksonville is a 1-point favorite right now. Korey, how do you feel about this one?
Both tough games for those teams last week because, Detroit narrowly lost to Buffalo. And, the Jags, I feel like they're still a little bit away. I like Trevor Lawrence. I really think that Calvin Ridley is going to be a massive help for them next year because I still feel like they're missing that elite receiver. I think a lot will play. They said Travis Etienne should be good. It's a big difference if he's playing or not. He's their best playmaker on offense right now. I still think even with Etienne, I'm going to go Detroit. So I think I'm going to go Detroit to win by, let's say less than a touchdown. Let's say 4 points. Let's say like a 21-17 game.
Gotcha. Yeah, giving Jacksonville a 1-point advantage really doesn't say much. It obviously says everyone expects this to be a pretty close game. Detroit's really found their stride. They were, they could have been up 3, on Buffalo's last drive, but their kicker missed a kick earlier in the game. So, Buffalo's very fortunate to get out of Detroit with a win on Thanksgiving. So, I think this is very close. Detroit has found something working with Jamal Williams. I think he's, been their most consistent runner, easily their most healthy. DeAndre Swift, still very talented. But I think what could be a game changer this week is their rookie wide receiver, Jameson Williams, is scheduled to make his NFL debut. Maybe they've got some things ready for him in his first game back. I'm sure he won't be full bore. I'm sure he's going to be on a little bit of a snap count, kind of a pitch count, just to make sure everything is okay, even though you would think this late in the year that this was on the timeline for him to get back to being 100% healthy. I just like Detroit a little bit more here, but man, I was still very impressed with what Trevor Lawrence did in Jacksonville last week. He just kind of took the game over late. He and Zay Jones found, really great connection. So, I think Detroit ends up maybe winning this one by 3. I think they were so close last week and just, defeat out of the jaws of victory there. So I like Detroit here too. Another interesting game. And I think this is interesting. Tennessee heads to Philly. This might not be as much of a game, but this is the AJ Brown revenge tour game. So Philadelphia favored by 5.5 at home. I'll start this one off, Korey. I can't let you start them all tonight. I think Philadelphia, I think this will be a closer game than people give credit for. Tennessee's defense, I know they've been down Harold Landry, but this unit has found a way to play a lot of teams very close. And it's just with the style of game they play, with King Henry running the ball, them taking, some calculated risks in the passing game, more check downs, more stick moving throws than anything. But I just think, eventually Philadelphia just kind of edges them out here. I think, their passing attack is obviously a lot better. There's a lot more talent there. Jalen Hurts is playing great football. And I think the biggest thing he's been able to do is he doesn't make mistakes right now. And that's huge for a second-year quarterback. Just as Pittsburgh fans, this is 3 weeks in a row. Kenny Pickett hasn't thrown an interception or whatever, or accounted for a turnover. So, turnovers are the name of the game when you can win the turnover battle. And then just have the obvious advantages that I think Philadelphia has in this game. I definitely think Philadelphia covers. Korey, how do you think this game
So when I was because I always try and make my picks on our CBS thing before this, so I kind of know which matchups. And I was kind of going back and forth on this game because, this is the type of team where, because at first thought, at least is what I'll say, Tennessee is the type of team that will beat the Eagles because they can keep their offense off the field, really grind them down, tire those guys out. But it's hard for me to see a way for the Titans to establish a successful running game because their schemes are great. Derrick Henry's great. They have a nice play action game, but the O-line leaves a bit to be desired, which is pretty crazy for how good their run game is. And you look at some of the guys on there,
Yeah.
but I don't think they'll be able to do what's necessary against the litany of players that the Eagles have right now across the board on their defensive line. So I think it'll be tough for the Titans to really get much rolling. What was the spread again?
5.5.
I think the Eagles cover that. I find it difficult to see how the Titans can get an offensive line rolling or get an offensive run game going.
Yeah, I agree. I just don't see Tennessee being able to keep up with this team if they, have shorter drives, and Philadelphia's offense is allowed to see the field. Mentioning revenge games, Cleveland is headed to Houston, and boy, who gets to play his first game back in the NFL this week? That's right, that guy, Deshaun Watson. Cleveland is favored by 7 heading into Houston. I think this is. I'll let you start off with this one.
So this is a game that I really, if you just switch out any other horrible team in the NFL's roster with the Texans, then I would pick them to win this game. But as bad as I think or as good as I think the Texans will try and play, and don't get me wrong, the Browns aren't a juggernaut by any means. The Texans roster is just so far back from what I feel like everyone else in the NFL is. Like, if you think our roster is bad, which I think ours is, just take a glance at top to bottom the Texans roster. There's like 5 good players on that entire roster. No quarterback, no receivers. It's awful. So I think they cover. I think it's going to be a tight game. I don't know how Kyle Allen and Nico Collins and any of those guys could pull enough strings to get a win in the fourth. Now, one thing I do want to ask you is, Watson hasn't played in 2 years, and Jacoby Brissett has played pretty solid. Do you think that Watson, even throughout the rest of the season, there's not much time left. Do you think he could really outplay how Brissett's been playing in this short of amount of time without really being able to get rolling again in like a full off season or anything like that?
Well, I mean, we did get to see Watson a little bit in preseason, and boy, he looked pretty rusty. So I
Mhm.
think, but more than anything, I think these are the games that Cleveland needs this year to get him ready for next year. More than anything,
Yeah.
I don't think Cleveland is delusional enough to think that they're going to make a playoff run.
Mm.
So that's what it comes down to me with anyway. But no, I don't think he will outplay Brissett. Brissett has played some great football this
Mhm.
year, and honestly, if there's any team next year that feels like they want to move on from their quarterback and maybe draft and sit and develop a guy, go sign Jacoby Brissett because this guy has played great this year
Mhm.
under the worst of circumstances. I mean, yes, he went to a team with a good running game or whatnot, but just with all this Deshaun Watson stuff overhanging himself, the Cleveland organization, he's had some really good games.
Mhm.
He shows that he's going to be around this league for probably a very long time. As long as he stays healthy because he's got the tools, and as he's gotten older, his mental aspect of this game has gotten a lot better too. So I mean, I would have much, looking back, it's kind of funny. I sure would have hell liked to have signed Jacoby Brissett over Mitchell Trubisky. I don't know about
Mhm.
you.
And
but yeah.
you want to know a little tidbit about that is I was swearing up and down that we were going to sign Jacoby Brissett because I don't know all of them, but I know our receivers coach, Matt Canada, and one other guy were all at NC State at the same time. And the year that they won a lot of games was the year they had Jacoby Brissett at quarterback. That was the year where all of them kind of scattered off and moved up the totem pole and got some better jobs. That was the year all of them had Jacoby Brissett. So I was honestly like, I was maybe pleasantly surprised by the Trubisky signing because Brissett was already signed, but I was dead certain that we were going to sign Jacoby Brissett, and he just seemed like the perfect quarterback for what we needed.
Yeah, that other coach with that NC State connection is Eddie Faulkner, our running backs coach. He
Okay.
was, he was part of the reason, we drafted Jalen Samuel, several years back. I'm
Mm-hmm.
pretty sure he was on that staff, and Brissett's like one of his last years, maybe, or something like that. But I'm kind of with you. I think Cleveland kind of runs away with this just because Houston's so damn bad. I mean, their roster is so pitiful, and they have no one to throw the ball to. I mean, it's just sad, honestly. Like you said, when Nico Collins is your number one receiver, your de facto number one, because Brandon Cooks is so pissed off he's still there. Um, so I definitely think Cleveland covers. I think especially if Watson is really raring to go and showing that he's ready to come back and he has a big game. I mean, I could see Cleveland running Houston out of the building. And I know Houston plays really hard, and they
Mm-hmm.
like to run the ball with Damian Pierce. As a matter of fact, Damian Pierce, get your ass in gear. This is 2 weeks in a row in fantasy. You have really let me down, man. The Americans say just have a solid game for the love of God. But I think Cleveland covers in this one. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I would have to probably say the game of the week. But I don't know. I think there's two games of the league. We're going to cover them both here. Miami traveling to San Francisco is probably the matchup I think most people have their eyes on because this is probably Miami's
Mm-hmm.
first big test since Tua's gotten back healthy, really ready and roll. San Francisco's favored by 4 here. Korey, I'll let you start off with this one. I think I took the last one.
They're traveling to San Francisco.
Yep, games in San Fran. They're favored by 4.
I mean, this is a great game. This is gonna fun offenses, defenses that fly around. I I think the AFC is better than the NFC, but this is tough because I pin both teams to be about in the same place in their divisions or in their conferences. But I trust the 49ers a little more. They've done a lot more. They played a lot more big games with basically the roster they have than the Dolphins have. Like you said, this is really the Dolphins' first big test. And I think the 49ers are really finding their groove right now. They know what they are. They know what they want to do. Not saying the Dolphins don't, but I think I'm just going to go and lean towards experience here over a more talented team in the Dolphins that I think.
Yeah, you know what? The interesting part about this game is not, not only is it, the Dolphins' first, tough test in a while, it's also student against master. Mike McDaniel came from San Francisco. Apparently, I was reading something this week, apparently Kyle Shanahan does not always treat his running backs the greatest or whatever. And I guess on Raheem Mostert's exit to Miami and Jeff Wilson's exit to Miami, I guess there's some tough feelings there, I guess.
Yeah.
So I think this could be a very interesting game for multiple facets. Both of these teams know what each other likes to do on offense. So, I mean, normally where I'd say, this could be a high scoring game, I very well think this could be a low scoring game because each team knows each other so well. I think that's the reason, why Pittsburgh and Baltimore are always low scoring games because we know each other so well. I think this kind of leans up to be kind of a similar game. Like you said, both defenses fly around. San Fran, the more talented defense, but Miami, the more talented offense. You could say, San Fran's had a trouble getting Deebo Samuel going this year. It's probably because, that they have Christian McCaffrey there now. They don't have to use him in ways that they've had in the past or whatever. But yeah, this game is so hard to figure out. I really want to say Miami in this one. And I think it's just because San Fran's passing defense has had some troubles. And I think having Tyreek Hill there and Jalen Waddle makes them have to kind of back off a little bit more from a defensive standpoint, as where I think Miami can hunker down a little more per se. But just such a tough game. I like Miami to win this outright. It's just a gut feeling that I think Miami's offense might be a little bit more than San Fran's defense is ready to take on. San Fran's defense has been very good this year for the most part, but there have been some games where they've been, the ball has been moved on them and they have been scored on. I just think that's one of those weeks. I think Miami's moving right parts at the right time. And I think Miami was on a bye last week too. Correct me if I'm wrong. Might be wrong there. I'm not sure. Kind of feels like that. But if so, just another week to prepare.
They beat the Texans.
Oh, well, that was a bye game.
Basically a bye week, yeah.
But you get my point. This should be a very good game, but I like Miami. Other game of the week, probably Kansas City headed to Cincinnati. Kansas City is a 2.5-point favorite. I'll start off with this one. I'll be honest. I think Kansas City blows them out. I don't see. I don't know. We said that in the last two matchups, and Cincinnati's won both the last two matchups. I just don't think that happens this time. How often do you get the best of Patrick Mahomes and crew for a third straight time? Not to mention healthy Juju Smith-Schuster this past week. That was a big deal. Certainly feels like they're using Marquez Valdez-Scantling a lot better. And they finally have started going to the best running back on their roster in Isaiah Pacheco. Thank God. I drafted him late in my dynasty nicely late in the year. But I just think it's a lot to deal with that offense. Travis Kelce's just a monster. He has more touchdowns than games he's played this year, which is just a ridiculous stat when you think about it. Logan Wilson, Jermaine Pratt have a lot of work cut out for him this week. I definitely like Kansas City to cover and win in this one. Korey, what do you think?
Yeah, I think I'm going to agree with you here. It feels like Mahomes, I mean, he's undoubtedly the best quarterback in the league right now. And that's saying something with how talented the top of that position is right now. And him and Kelce, I don't know what you do to stop him. You put Jalen Ramsey out there on Travis Kelce out wide, like out on the outside of the numbers, and he's winning. Like he's winning against. You can say what you want about him this year. He's still a top 3 corner. So if Travis Kelce and Mahomes are not only just beating, but kind of destroying, like annihilating Jalen Ramsey. I mean, there's like 8 clips of him getting cooked that game. I'm not sure what anyone on the Bengals can do. Logan Wilson's good, but this just feels like one of those games where, I mean, almost maybe even for the rest of the year, I'm not sure we can stop Patrick Mahomes and Jason Kelsey if they don't stop themselves. So I think you're right. I think the Chiefs, off that combo, is back, kind of beats them by double digits.
Yeah, the one thing I did forget to bring up for Cincinnati. Jamar Chase is back this week, so that definitely helps change things up. Kansas City's passing defense has not been great. Doesn't look like they're going to have L'Jarius Sneed this week. He went out with an injury in that game, which definitely looked like more than just a midweek deal to get through. So yeah, I think it'll be a close game for most of the game, but I think Kansas City wins by double digits in the end. I'm just with you. They're on such a roll right now. I just think it's tough to project Cincinnati really sticking with them for the whole game. Now, but you and I both say that, and they'll probably end up winning the game.
Yeah.
But last game of the week, we're going to get to our 5-star supposedly matchup this week. Pittsburgh travels to Atlanta. We've already talked about this game a lot. Korey, I'm going to let you start off with our first score prediction of the evening for this one.
I'm going to go 28-24 Steelers win. On paper, there's no reason that we shouldn't put up 28 points. They shouldn't be able to run against us. They can. I mean, they'll take shots. I think they'll clip us a few times. There's going to be times where we give them a short field on offense. But I think when looking at the whole scope of the game, ignoring the ebbs and the flows where it's going to look bad, then it's going to look good. I think this ends up a 4-point game where it's a slow fourth quarter. I feel like it's going to be kind of a point explosion in the second and third quarter, which it always feels like it is for our games. But I think it's going to be a narrowish win against a team that we're probably performing about as well as for the season, if you look at it as a whole. Like, this is our tier of team.
Right. We're punching at our weight this week. So I would have to say, I guess I'm a little more optimistic. I think but it's going to be more like 27-17. Offense has found a way, but you know what? I'm going to revive here. No, I like that 27-17. I just don't see Atlanta doing a whole lot on offense that really scares us. I think their best weapon is Patterson, and he's a running back, and we've been playing the run pretty well as of recently.
Knock on wood.
Yeah, knock on wood. So yeah, hopefully him and Algier don't have big games, but I just think we've got so many good advantages this game. This is the game where we kind of put our foot down for a team that doesn't put their foot down very often, if ever. I don't think I've ever seen a killer instinct from this team unless it's been from Big Ben himself. So yeah, I just like this. I think we've just got too many advantages this week. I think it's 27-17. We're not going to be perfect by any means, but I think we're going to move the ball. We're going to, hit some plays when we need to. So anything left for the crowd here before we hang this one up, Korey?
No, I think I've gotten my piece out this week.
Yep. Next week, Steeler fans, I swear my voice will be improved. Hopefully. I don't know about you guys. I've been taking a lot of drinks this episode. Make sure I get through here okay. But I'll be raring in form as hopefully the Steelers will this weekend. There was a very nice crowd in Indianapolis last night, and God forbid they even started chanting, "Here we go." So the only thing we might still be going for here is a Tomlin undefeated record. It still lives on that there's a possibility we finish out with their winning record, believe it or not. So take it with a grain of salt. It's still on the table. We'll end it with that. Go Steelers, and hopefully we take advantage of a good matchup this week.